This man has held the USWA Southern Heavyweight Championship 6 times and has been a USWA World Tag Team Champion, WWF World Tag Team Champion, the legendary Dr. X.
Well, wait, Dr. X?
Hold on, I got crickets here. What's going on? Oh, Dr. Tom
No.
Prichard.
Yeah. I thought I had to think about that for a while because I've been a few doctors. I've been Dr. X, I've been Mr. X, I've been Dr. P, Dr. X, and Y and Z. So, yeah, guys, hey, what a pleasure it is to talk to you tonight. I love the Angry Marks Network, by the way.
Well, we definitely appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, and also let me just say, Zane, I think that disgraced or not, I really kind of dug Stardust the other night, last night actually. It was kind of cool for me, but I'm sure it's not everybody's cup of tea, so to speak. If you drink tea.
No, I actually loved it. I thought it was great. It reminded me of the old video game with Starman, and then also the look was similar to Hogan's run as Mr. America. So, and you know, I anytime that we get more roads on the TV, then I'm good with it. I was afraid that they were going to turn it into where they're feuding with each other right off the bat over something stupid. So this gives them another chance to get back together, and we get to see them on TV more.
Well, one thing real quick again. When I first saw
Zane, do you want
Cody come out,
want to clarify, Zane?
Go ahead, Tom.
I'm losing you guys. I'm sorry. I must have a bad connection. But I was just going to say that when I first saw Cody came out, it kind of reminded me of Robin, and I look at Dustin as Batman. So you know that's what I immediately thought. So Goldust and his little buddy Stardust kind of had a new twist to it and gave him some new life. So I just wanted to mention that right off the bat because I heard some people think it wasn't really that great last night, but I kind of thought it was cool.
Tom, how in the world did you hook up with the Iron Sheik to get your career started?
Well, he was in Texas. He was wrestling as Muhammad Farouk back then, and I was working in the office for Paul Bosch, who was a promoter in Houston. That was when they had these things called the Territory.
Territories? What's that, Tom?
Yeah. I'm not sure if anybody really remembers those. I'm not sure if Will was around when Territories were big. Will, how old are you, by the way?
I am 49, sir.
Oh, then you were around. Never mind.
Sure I was.
Okay. He was asking how old Will is.
Oh, how old Will was?
Yes. Yeah, I'm 34, actually.
Yeah, then I don't think you were around. Yeah, and so the independent wrestler Will Huckabee. For an independent wrestler back then, we called them outlaws. But he that is to me. I was working in the office in Paul Bosch's office. That getting there was a whole different story in itself. But Paul knew I wanted to wrestle, and there was a football player who wanted to wrestle too at this time. And Gary Hart would come in every Friday afternoon and go over the matches with Paul before the show. And he brought the Iron Sheik with him, and usually he brings some of the boys anyway, but this time he brought, his name again was Muhammad Farouk back then, and he brought Sheiky in, and Paul told me I could go down to the Coliseum with Cosgrove and this football player and kind of go along with him and train. And I always brought my gear with me anyway, just hoping I would get a shot. Don't know how it was going to come about, but just so happens this is how it came about. So went down to the Coliseum with Sheiky Baby and this football player, and he stretched us, and the football player left after 2 weeks, but I trained for the next 2 months with Bro, and then he left the territory, and Nick Kozak and a guy named Joe Mercer had a ring set up in their record service, and Paul gave me his blessing to go over there and train with them too. But it just so happens I was at the right place at the right time, and that's how I got hooked up with the fabulous Iron Sheik.
Now, my big question to you, Tom, is Sheik as crazy and profanity-laced in real life as he is on Twitter and on Facebook?
Now he's all, look, we're all crazy and insane when we need to be. So the thing is, Sheik knows when to turn it on and when to turn it off. But I will tell you this, the first time in the Coliseum, we go down and there's nobody there, and now I'm, the first time I'm ever actually going in the dressing room and getting ready for a match, so I think. We go out, and Cosmo's wearing his Olympic singlet, and he's trying to show us some amateur moves. And I don't want to learn amateur. I want to learn how it's done in the ring, professional wrestling. So we go through about 30 minutes of warming up and crap and stretching us. Now he's going to show us how to lock up, and he wants us to lock up solid. But when he went to lock up with me, I slapped him in the ear, and he just looked down. And he says, "No, I did not say it like this," and he slapped me in the ear. And I heard a few GDs and an MF in there once or twice. That was back then. But as he went later on and he learned the ways of the world, so to speak, I think he definitely might have got a little crazier. I mean, but I love him. You can't help but love the guy if you know him. I mean, again, he knows when to turn it on, he knows when to turn it off. And sometimes you just don't want to turn it off, and I think that's probably where he's at.
Tom, did you get forced to do the Persian clubs?
No, I could not do the clubs. No, only Sheiky Baby does the clubs. No, man, that's another gimmick too. With the wrist or whatever it is. Yeah, they're heavy. I did pick them up, but there's a gimmick to it. I sure as hell couldn't do it. Sure as hell didn't want to do it. So I didn't know. I didn't think in the middle of a match I was going to stop and do the Iranian clubs, but never know when that could come in handy. I might be able to do it on America's Got Talent if I would have known that show would have been around later on, you know?
Hey, true. That's a good future for you, too. I'm going to kick on over to the disgraced one himself, Zane Paisley, Zane Dust.
Well, Tom, coming from Texas, how did you end up in Los Angeles at the beginning of your career?
Well, once again, I had some matches around Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas when I first started out in October 79, and then Paul Bosch again got me booked in Portland, Oregon in January of 1980. And before I left, I was in a battle royal in Houston. I had a couple matches, and I was supposed to drive across country and go to Portland. But Gary Hart came to me and said, "Hey, you're going to go to California before you go to Portland." And I said, "Well, when do I go to Portland?" He says, "You just go to California for 2 weeks, and then you go to Portland." So I drove to California, showed up. Mike LaBelle was a promoter. Chavo Guerrero was a booker. And, you're new in the business. I was new in the business, and it was a different business and time back then. So I'm wrestling now in Los Angeles at the Olympic Auditorium, what the magazine's called the Madison Square Garden of the West Coast. And I think it was the second weekend they had Al Madrill and me win the America's Tag Team Championship. Now I'm a champion, in the wrestling business. Yeah, and so I went to Chavo and said, "Wait a minute, I thought I was supposed to go to Portland." He goes, No, man, you're staying here." I didn't know any better. I stayed there and never called anybody. And when I talked to Paul, he just assumed that I'd called Don Owens, which I never did. So, I mean, that's how I wound up there. I was supposed to originally go to Oregon, but I just stopped in L.A. and I didn't leave for about a year. And I'm glad I didn't, because I got a trip to Japan and made some friends and had a great experience out there. There was no money, that's for sure, but I had a great time, and it was a place to see, living in Van Nuys, and got to go to the beach when I wanted to, and so that was pretty much it. It was by mistake, I guess.
Well, I asked this of every guest when they mention going to Japan. Have you been to Ribera Steakhouse, and can you get me a jacket and the Zubaz pants?
Well, yeah, of course. I went to Ribera Steakhouse. That was the main thing you went for, man. Is you went to Ribera's and you got a jacket, and it's just a small hole in the wall place, but it's kind of cool because I heard he changes the pictures every tour. Harley Race had a picture up there that said, from the real world champion, and he always put it up there when Harley was there. But when Hogan came over, he made sure he had Hogan's picture up. So, Ribera Steakhouse was cool. And if you didn't go to Ribera's when you were over there, it was your own fault. Sure did. Every chance I got, every time we went over there, made a trip to Ribera's.
We are talking to none other than Dr. Tom Prichard, also known as Body Donna Zip. We'll get to that later on.
Oh, no. That's been scratched from my memory. That's been scratched from my history. No more Body Donna Zip. I don't know who you're talking about. He died in a fiery car crash.
All righty, man.
Or a plane crash, thank you. Hate to bring up bad news.
No, if you're going to say that, Tom, say it in your best Bad News Barrett voice. I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
No, I don't believe in gimmick infringement either.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Let's kick it on over to the Morning Star, Will Huckabee. Will.
Well, Mr. Prichard, first of all, before I ask you any questions, a friend of mine, and I'm pretty sure somebody who's very well known by you, told me to tell you hi, Elliot Russell.
You know Elliot Russell?
Yes, sir, I do. I actually work with him at N-Signal over there at NWA Smoky Mountain.
Oh, well, very good, man. No, Elliot is. He's a good worker. He's got a lot of promising. He has a very promising future. He has a lot of promising things ahead for him. Actually, I mean, he's a little crazy, a little goofy, which is sometimes to his disadvantage. But at the same time, I got to say, just a real quick plug: Elliot Russell has a great future in professional wrestling if he keeps improving.
Yeah, as soon as he found out you was going to be on the show, he was like, make sure you tell him I said hi. So there we go.
Yeah, very
That's
good.
For you, Elliot.
We'll give him a cheap plug, man. It's all good.
All right, my first question is, okay, so, you started off in Texas and you went to California, and then after that you went to the Southeast. How much different was it working in the South as compared to the West Coast and in Texas?
Well, there were better workers. There was more of a talent pool. Because when I came home from California, I went back to Texas, I believe. And that's when I started working. See, I had this conversation with Jim Cornette 2 months ago. I couldn't remember exactly where I went after each territory, but then we kind of nailed it down. After L.A., I went back to Houston, and there was just a wealth of talent there. And I hooked back up with Chavo Guerrero and Manny Fernandez, Tiger Conway Jr. They kind of took me under their wing, and I learned a lot and traveled, and I had a blast in there too. The Texas area has always been one of those hotbeds for professional wrestling, where the guys were a little more stiff and more serious in what they did. LA at that time was pretty much done with it. It finished up really being a major drawing territory, I think, in the 70s. But in 1980, it was definitely on its last legs, and Mike LaBelle was he really wasn't into promoting or anything like that. He was doing hokey stuff and things like that. In Texas, they were actually trying to draw money and wanted their guys laying it in and being solid and having great matches. So that was a difference. The talent pool and the attitude, I think, was if you're going to be in this crew, you better work up to their standards. So that was the biggest difference for me.
All right, and did you actually have like any, I guess you could say, established veterans and stuff actually pull you to the side and actually give you that stroke of confidence to let you know that you were actually going to be very successful in this business? Or was it just, they would tell you, oh, you're doing good, but not give you too much?
No, I'll never forget Al Madrill. He was 30 years old when I teamed up with him. And I remember watching Al when I was a kid in Texas, when I was a teenager. And so I had my first match when I was 20 years old, so really wasn't much older. But he was so miserable all the time. He just wasn't a pleasant guy to be around. And I couldn't understand how he could be like that. And then I got his age and I understood a lot more. But, there were certain guys who were more encouraging than others. But at the same time, it was still that environment of, you had your old timers who resented a young punk like me getting in their business. But the business was changing. It was changing to younger guys and a faster, different style. You got to remember, looking back, Freddie Blassie was not a main event star until he was 40 years old. So you got to think about that, man. He spent, I don't know how long, at least 20 years in the business before he got to be a main eventer. So, that was the attitude those guys had. There were some guys who would say, yeah, kid, keep it up. Mickey Doyle was a guy who was a real encouraging guy, veteran along the way. John Tolos was a good veteran and guy. Manny Fernandez and Chavo, they were encouraging. Dr. Conway Jr. And then you had the guys like, there was a guy in California and Texas, Grand Goliath, who just ate me up one time, like 30 minutes in San Bernardino. We had to go to do a draw. And, I couldn't fight back if I wanted to. And he just tied me up in knots. But you had guys like that, and then you had guys, some guys who wanted to help you, but not everybody was that giving back then.
Tom, you made mention, of the territories, and the old-time fans like myself miss them dearly. But you've been under some pretty legendary names. I mean, you said Los Angeles and with Judo Gene LaBelle, Paul Bosch in the St. Louis area, and I'm sure he's had more influence than just that area. But you also hooked up with our guest of last week, and we talked about you a little bit with him, James E. Cornette. What was your your time like in Smoky Mountain with Jim Cornette?
I knew Jim when I first went to Tennessee, I believe in 1982 or around that time, and you just knew he was one of us. And when I say about one of us, I used to write and take pictures for the wrestling magazines, and so did he, and so did Eddie Gilbert. So did a lot of guys who got in the business in the 80s. We were looking for a way to get in, and it wasn't like it is now. We have a wrestling school on every corner, so you had to work your way in any way you could, and you could tell Jim had a love and a passion for the business. So when I had the opportunity to work with Jim and Stan Lane, especially after they had the run in Atlanta, I want to say a dream come true, because it really was. Having a good time with Jim. I knew Jim would lay out everything. I knew Jim had a good mind and head on his shoulders. So I was happy to be, associated with him and Stan and have a good time. I knew it was going to be successful. We thought it would be successful. It was just that the times were changing, and there's nothing we could do about that. So while we didn't get rich, we had a good time. We made a living. And we had some really great matches, man. The Rock and Roll Express and Fantastics, and whoever came through, Jericho and Lance Storm. It was a pretty good time. And I'm living in Knoxville today, and it's a weird town. It's a wrestling town. We're doing a show this Saturday night at the Coliseum Ballroom. David Marquez is coming in from California. Paul Adams is coming in from Nashville. And it's going to be Southeastern Championship Wrestling. We're doing 3 tapings. So, I mean, Knoxville's a different kind of wrestling town. And, Jim thought it would work. And it did for a little bit. And we had a great time. And just watching Jim work and be that evil mad scientist that he is, wrestling was his life. And it was very, very cool to be around that energy and that environment.
For those people who listen to this show, most of them, Tom, know that you're brothers with Bruce Prichard, former executive at TNA, and I love you, Brother Love. I guess, did it drive you nuts when he was on TV and getting more exposure than you?
No, not at all. I was happy for him. I mean, I really was. And that may sound crazy, but I really was happy for him. I knew, even though I might have wanted to be there, I didn't belong there. It wasn't my time. It wasn't my place. It wasn't my spot. And Bruce was one of those guys. Is one of those guys that he knows how to play the game. He knows how to make things happen. And I know what the game is. I know what you have to do, and it's not necessarily something I care to do all the time. And I was very happy for him. I mean, he did what he did, and very successful at it. So more power to him.
Let's kick it back over to Zane Dust.
Tom, you had mentioned being a photographer, and another guy that I think started off as a photographer was Paul Heyman, and you briefly worked ECW matches. What was that like, going from Smoky Mountain, which is, the Southern great storytelling, to kind of the spot fest that ECW could be at times?
Well, I'll tell you this. When we first walked in the dressing room of the ECW arena, and if you've ever seen the ECW arena, first of all, have you guys ever seen the ECW arena live and in person?
I have not.
Oh,
I've been there. I know what it is.
Okay, it's under that freeway, and it's in just a horrible, I don't know if it's a horrible part of Philly, but but I don't know that I'd like to be walking out there too late at night anyway.
It is a hard part of Philly.
Right. Well, we walked in the dressing room that night. I can't mention names just to protect the guilty, but somebody grabbed me and there was a downstairs, and they took me downstairs, and I saw this guy doing that. I saw that guy doing this, and I said, I'm home. This is the place to be, man. This is kind of cool. It was kind of, it was a rebel feel to it, and, the business, again, was way different. There were no wellness policies. There were no testing and things like that. So pretty much Wild West outlaws, and these were the outlaw of the outlaws. And, I felt right at home. And Paul Heyman, for everything that he gets accused of, well, he's a pretty smart guy, and it's evident by what he's done and what he's been able to accomplish on WWE. So he was very, very good at what he does best, and that's rally the troops and get them to fight, for a cause, even if there is no cause. And he'll make something up, and that was a great thing. That was a talent that you either have or you don't. And Paul was very, very good at rallying his troops. So I always liked Paul. He actually came to Alabama when I was there with Eddie Gilbert, and he's a northern guy. He's a New York kid, and you come to Birmingham, Alabama, and try that stuff. Well, he got a little heat. No, he got a lot of heat actually, and but you got to admire that because he did it so. It takes talent to get people that mad at you where they want to kill you, and that's what he could do. And he's a talented guy, man. He really is. He's a talented guy.
Go ahead, Zane.
Well, so from there, the going to the WWF, how was that a little different? Traveling all across the country instead of in more of the regional promotions.
Well, we again, going to WWF at that time wasn't the most ideal conditions because it was just off the trial. Everybody was pretty much leaving, and Vince didn't know if he was going to prison or not. So pay was down. The guys were there. We knew a lot of the guys there. It was, we'd crossed paths before. So it wasn't that bad. It was just, let's see, the climate is this. Sometimes it doesn't help when you have someone in power as a friend or brother. It could hurt more than help. And I'm not saying that it did or didn't, but at the same time, I was in a position where I was just happy to be there. And you can't be just happy to be there. You have to be proactive, and you have to be wanting to be that top guy or wanting to be make yourself successful. You can't rely on anybody else, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I could go to anybody or bitch or complain about what I had and what I was being given. I didn't know I had to go take it. I knew, but I didn't want to go and cause any waves. So I was just content to be there and do what we had to do and make what we had to make. So then when I got to cut my hair because there was no other spot available, I really was just like, oh my God, dreading every minute almost. But it was a job, and that's the kind of way I looked at it.
Let's kick it on over to the Morning Star himself, Will Huckabee.
Well, Mr. Prichard, since you've already brought it up in a roundabout way, and I know you actually want to forget it happened, but I really want to know, and I know a lot of our listening fans want to know, what was your first thought and or reaction when they told you that you were going to be a body donor?
I thought I could get out of it. I thought no, because what happened was, it came time for the heavenly bodies to end, and we knew that was going to happen. And then I got a call saying, well, how would you like to cut your hair? And first of all, I said I would do anything just to, have a job there. And they said, okay, hold on. So they hung up and called me back and said, how would you feel about cutting your hair and dyeing it blonde and being Candido's cousin? I said, absolutely not. They said, okay, great. Hung up on me. I thought about it for about 5 seconds and said, oh shit, that's a job. So, I called back and said, all right, still thinking I might be able to talk my way out of it. And, sure enough, at Hershey, Pennsylvania, we went to a salon and they filmed it, cutting my hair. But man, it was like, all right, I tried to look at it as, it's just hair. But really, I had that hair for a long time, and it was like my shield from society, man. It was waving that flag where I could just kind of hide behind it and, didn't have to look at anybody if I didn't want to. Now all of a sudden my face is out there and I have to open my eyes and I'm like, oh man. So it was a different attitude. I mean, it was a different look, and I didn't care for it, didn't like it, and I wasn't really happy with the way things were going. But again, I had to look at the alternative, and that was going home and doing something I really didn't want to do. So I was happy to be on the road, and at the same time wasn't really thrilled about being a body donna. And long story short, it sucked. Thank you.
Now,
yeah.
I understand it was not the greatest gimmick ever. But I mean, you were teaming up with Chris Candido, who, in my opinion, was a very, very good worker. But you were in the heavenly bodies and you were the body donnas. Which one was the better tag team partner for you, or in your opinion?
Well, Candido was a better tag team partner because I really did love Chris, and he really was a great kid. He's a great guy, and I understood him. Jimmy Del Rey and I thought Jimmy was a great worker in the ring. He really was, but we were just two different people outside the ring. But here's the deal, with Chris, we had Sonny, and Sonny at that time was, the hottest downloaded celebrity on AOL or whatever it was, and she knew it, and she didn't waste or lose any moment to tell us how hot she was or show us, and it was just that kind of stuff. I mean, on the other hand, I had Jimmy as a partner, and we go to the ring, and again have great matches, but we're working with the bushwhackers or the smoking guns, and I knew where that spot was going to be, and again, I was happy to be there, but I knew that's what we were going to do unless we stood up and said something, and I just wasn't. Jimmy and I, again, we tried to do things outside the ring together, but I found that he liked to do this, and I liked to do that, and the two didn't mix very well. So, for that reason, I just talked to Jimmy not too long ago. We're going to be together in August at the NWA Fan Fest in Charlotte for the first time in years, so that's kind of cool. But back then it was just we were coming off being outlaws in a territory where that was pretty much acceptable, and then we're going to WWF where all eyes are on us pretty much, just waiting for one of us to slip on a banana peel. And that's why I kind of I'd go to the bar once in a while, but most of the time I went back to my room because I knew who was going to see me, who wasn't. So Jimmy was the kind of guy I like to come to the bar and say, let everybody know we were there. And I was the kind of guy, if we're going to go to the bar, I want to sit in the back and I want to watch what happens and see who gravitates to what side of the room, that kind of stuff, But either way, we had a good time. And I had a good time with Chris for a while, too.